Good morning. I want to talk to you for a few minutes about blockchain. Now, the last couple of years have been incredibly exciting and a bit of a roller coaster for cryptocurrencies. And we've seen really almost in a matter of months, not even years, the emergence of an entirely new sector, decentralized finance. In spite of all this, I think we're only getting started with what is going to be over the next decade, the tokenization of everything. And when I say everything, I really mean everything. Of course, we're talking about assets, securities, many of which are already being tokenized, money, where central banks across the world are talking about the introduction of digital currency, more complicated, perhaps less liquid assets, whether they're environmental rights or even wine bottles, which are being tokenized and turning into investable assets. But we're not just talking about assets, also critical information, whether the digital twin of a COVID vaccine or the log file from your cloud deployment. All of these things are going to be tokenized and put on the blockchain, and that is going to bring incredible value. It's going to allow unparalleled automation, transparency, security. It's going to power the next decade of digital transformation. But there's a problem. And that problem is a scalability bottleneck of blockchain. Now, Bitcoin and Ethereum, they scale to tens of transactions per second, and settlement requires tens of minutes, if not hours. The world's fastest blockchain networks today offer speed and throughput in the tens of thousands of transactions per second. And that's good. That's an impressive feat of engineering, but it's simply not enough for a world of tokenized assets, tokenized exchange of value, and entirely new asset classes. And this is where Guardtime comes in. For more than a decade, we've been using our hyperscalable blockchain technology to help the world's government and leading critical major industries solve their cybersecurity challenges and their supply chain challenges. Now, in the last few years, we've developed a digital currency platform that solves the scalability bottlenecks of blockchain in a more general way. What am I talking about when I talk about scalability? Well, in testing with the world's leading central banks and private financial institutions, we've shown that we can offer transactions at a very low cost, thousandths of a cent per transaction and an even smaller environmental footprint, millionths of a gram of CO2 per transaction, with settlement speed under a second, and perhaps most importantly, doing all of this at throughputs of millions of transactions per second with nothing in the way to doing tens of millions and hundreds of millions. We're going to be launching and talking publicly much more about this platform in the next couple of months. Right now, we're looking for financial institutions, for fintechs, for banks, and for others who are looking to occupy the commanding heights of the tokenized economy for the next decade. If that sounds like you, we'd love to have a conversation about how we can work together. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much for that insight of what Guardtime does in this area. We've got one question here that was already sort of touched upon that maybe you can expand a bit more. Yeah. You mentioned central banks and projects there. Could you tell us more, what exactly were the targets of those projects and what were the results?
Yeah. Well, I mean, central banks across the world are looking at issuing their own digital currencies, so an equivalent to cash or fiat money that would perhaps be tokenized, perhaps held in accounts. And what I can say is that we've been working with some of the most advanced and the largest central banks in this area to validate and test our technology, and they're quite interested. And I think more broadly, this is part of the, money is going to be one of the assets that really transforms in the next decade. And central banks, of course, also have competition for a change. It's not just the monopoly that they have on the issuance of money, because they have to think about how they relate in a landscape of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and an increasingly rich asset space.
You're giving me wonderful segues. Thank you very much. The next question actually comes from a cryptocurrency-minded person, sort of a technological direction. If you could compare your scalable blockchain solution or what you envisage in that space to anything that is currently globally used, what would be the closest in terms of scalability and so on?
I don't really think there is a parallel. I mean, because of the way in which we're able to handle parallelization, we can simply outperform pretty much everything out there by a factor of 100.
Well, that's a pretty bold statement, and I'm sure that
it is, and we look forward to proving it.
As you should. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Luukas, for your insight.